Hello, I'm Jacqueline Hawley from Devon and Cornwall Police, and I've undertaken the lead for the public health approaches in policing network across English forces. So I'm just here today to talk to you a little bit about my journey and then the development of the network. So on my appointment to Head of Prevention for Devon and Cornwall Police, I sought to understand the preventative role of policing within serious violence and serious organised crime against existing national strategy and evolving practice. As part of my horizon scanning, I reached out to a number of other people in order to learn more. These conversations led me to connecting with the authors of the Public Health in Policing, College of Policing guidance, and also to connect with the public health approaches in policing as part of the serious violence strategy. By taking on board the learning of others, who were already thinking and probably more importantly acting and operating differently, I developed my own force approach, which has recently been taken on by Devon and Cornwall Police as our overall approach to vulnerability. I actually found that my role from the start was that I was developing a lot of conversations, sharing ideas, challenging some of our more traditional thought processes, cascading information and research, and highlighting existing good practice, both in force but also national best practice to colleagues. And it was that connecting and learning from other people in order to evolve our own force practice that led me into the role I've now got as part of the Public Health Approaches in Policing Lead Network. That's how I actually became involved with the Public Health Consensus Task Force, and then later on some work with the MPCC Public Health Approaches in Policing portfolio. At that point in time, there were existing networks across Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, because within policing and public health, those conversations had progressed quite significantly. But there wasn't a network for English forces, and at that time we didn't have a mechanism to engage with one another. In January of 2020, the College of Policing and the National Police Chiefs Council with Public Health England facilitated a Leeds event at the college, which was part of the next steps for their programme of work. That event brought strategic and operational leads together, and those individuals had responsibilities within their own force to embed a public health approach across policing and across their partnerships. What became evident at that presentation was that there was an awful lot of activity and good practice that was emerging, but there was a real strong sense from the delegates that were in the room that they needed to connect with one another beyond the conference, that they wanted to share practice, they wanted to understand evolving practice, and they wanted to continue the evidence base in relation to what works. So that event then launched the concept of the National Public Health and Policing Network for English Forces, and I volunteered to assist in that, purely based around my own experiences of seeking out best practice. So we're going to go into the slides at this point. And then I'll just kind of share with you some of our journey. So we were slightly delayed due to the COVID pandemic in launching the national network across England. And that was because we really did recognise that everyone was going to be extremely busy in their own day jobs, maintaining business continuity. So we didn't actually go live with the network until June of 2020. And the first things that we considered really was what was it we were seeking to achieve through the network from the public health approach and from the MPCC approach. So what was it that we needed the network to deliver for us, really? And there were a few key points to that, which I share with you. One was about giving visibility of public health approaches in policing across England, so making people aware of its existence and the programme of work that entailed. It was also about connecting forces, so as I said earlier, connecting forces with one another, but also connecting public health colleagues into policing, connecting academic research and research bodies that were operating in this space and bringing those people together. We wanted to recognise and create and then act upon opportunities. So, for example, opportunities around national research, opportunities around funding streams that were being made available through central government, opportunities to share practice and develop those partnerships, and from that then seek to kind of partner up and share ventures was very much part of our aspiration. The next area of focus for us was that we were really keen that the network was a two-way channel of communication. The consensus group was really keen, the national consensus group was really keen to ensure that we were able to cascade information and have a mechanism for cascading information across forces to share national practice, to identify good practice and share ideas, and that we were able to cascade that information out. We also wanted to ensure that those forces that we were engaging with had a single point of contact through the network to be able to share information with us, so that in turn we were able to kind of recycle that and send that out to a wider audience. And then the other point for us was that we really wanted to use the network to understand the strategic blockers. So those things that were inhibitors to the development of public health approaches, whether they be at force level or whether they be partnership issues or whether they be national blockers, in order that we could understand them and where appropriate, seek to escalate them in order to be able to resolve them. We thought about the importance of the network in joining people together, and through that joining people together, really creating strength and creating synergy within the programme of work. We wanted to create that energy and impetus for change, so that momentum of change to keep the conversation going, to keep the conversation growing, and to kind of be able to communicate that wider and wider, in order that actually some of this change was very much kind of organic and growing and becoming viral in that change mechanism, in order that we could really drive that cultural change across policing and across our partnerships. So that was really important to us. And then I think for me, we recognised that 18 of the forces across England already had violent reduction units. So we actually anticipated that those forces that had violent reduction units would already be very heavily involved in the development of public health approaches, in the cultural change, in that partnership landscape. And they would be really pivotal to us as a network in sharing that practice and enabling us to kind of cascade that wider than those forces to areas across England and other forces who didn't have the violent reduction units, and therefore perhaps didn't have the same impetus impetus for change and that kind of national direction through the Home Office and the support that sits around that. So we recognise that those forces would have plenty of good practice to share, and also, really importantly, that they would have the expertise, that they would have learned some significant lessons that they were in a position to share, and that their level of expertise really we wanted to harness. And that led then on to the thinking of actually what about those other forces who are still kind of evolving in their journey. And we recognised that there would be individuals like myself in my journey who actually needed to reach out to other people to be able to consider evolving practice and to triangulate some of their own thought processes as leaders and experts, I suppose you might say, in the field of prevention. So we wanted the network to be a support mechanism and to provide some mentorship around that drive for change, so that it provided both knowledge and information in order to build the confidence and the understanding to drive that change, but actually recognising that driving change and keeping your momentum within that, it can in itself be quite draining to keep that energy up. So, you know, how could we keep that momentum going? So I offered to coordinate the network purely because I'm passionate about prevention. I'm not an expert, I'm not an academic. I didn't have a huge level of knowledge to share myself, but it was purely based around the fact that I was seeking this information out, that I felt that, you know, I would have the understanding that it could enable us to kind of develop this network further. So we have looked at what progress we've made to date. And with the mechanism that we've got at the moment, which is predominantly based around the use of force email accounts, we have developed that network across English forces, which has been effective in cascading information out to all forces. So I undertake a regular newsletter bulletin where I will cascade information around funding opportunities, research, academic research opportunities, etc. We've also recognised that the network as we've developed enables us to keep people up to date. So up to date with government announcements around funding streams, current practice and current research that's recently come out. We've been working very closely with the college. I've got great support from the college policing, and we have supported the college in undertaking a call for action, so some calls for practice to support research within the college around public health approaches. And we have also utilised the network in order to be able to call for action around funding opportunities. So recently the National Institute for Health was seeking partners and bids around academic research. So again, being able to cascade that information out through the network has been really effective. We've been able to promote funding streams, as I said earlier, and interestingly now, a number of those funding streams, for example, the Youth Endowment Fund, now know about the network and are making regular contact with me in order to be able to keep that information rolling out to forces. And likewise, wider partners have come on board, and I've been able to make links with other portfolio leads nationally, for example, the child-centred policing, adverse childhood experiences. They all are now aware of the network, and I've made links with those leads so that we can share information across our network and into their networks. So it really is an evolving picture. However, we do recognise that the mechanisms that we've got at the moment have limitations, and we are now evolving our approach further, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Mr. Jonathan Borrett, who will talk you through those developments. Thank you for your time.